everybody. Thanks so much for spending your Wednesday evening with Alec and myself, and it's fun to see so many familiar faces. My name's Joanna Salinas. I am the Outreach Coordinator with the Waukesha County Green Team. And if you are unfamiliar with the Green Team, we are a nonprofit in Waukesha County. And we focus really on educating around sustainability issues. So water, waste, land use, energy, transportation. And we started, since we can't really gather all together, we started a virtual series, and this is a part of it. So without any further ado, I want to introduce Alec to all of you, and actually he'll do a far better job introducing himself. But Alec is a member of our permaculture and gardening group that we have with the Waukesha County Green Team, and he's also a pretty new board member to the Green Team, but he's been around as a community advisor for a couple of years. And he also owns his own business here in Waukesha County. So Alec, why don't I hand it over to you and feel free to take it away.
All right, well, thank you, Joanna, and thank you everyone for joining us on this presentation. As Joanna said, I'm a member of the Waukesha County Green Team Board. I'm also part of the Permaculture and Gardening Group, which was kind of my first step into the Green Team. And yeah, that really got me started and excited for a lot of this stuff. And then I'm also part of the Master Gardener program with Southeast Wisconsin. And as Joanna mentioned, I do own a gardening and edible landscaping company. So I really try to take these principles and take them out to my customers. And you'll see some of the projects that I've been working on, and some of the photos and how that kind of plays into the permaculture ideas. First, does this laser pointer thing work?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then I can kind of point out a few things within the photos that will make a little more sense as we get into it. And yeah, let's jump into it. So permaculture in your garden. So really what we're looking at is taking the permaculture ideas and putting them into our own properties around here and into even small gardens, or really looking at the full landscape and what you can do. So this photo I took in Hawaii. It's actually a permaculture farm that they are growing, and of course I forget what it is now, yucca. Yeah, something like that. But you can see they've got, terraces, and this place just did a really cool job of, really using the land to grow their food. So a couple of things I point out here, this is a holistic approach that looks at nature and takes into account a lot of the elements that we have all around us. So where to start? Observation is always the first point of permaculture. Really, a good permaculturist will go out and observe their land for like a year and get to know where everything is, how things are growing, looking at certain different, elements that they can utilize, and then they start to plan their project. And from that, they start strategically placing different things throughout their property so that they can thrive. And I like this diagram that I found a couple of years ago, and it shows, you plan from where you are, the people portion of this, and then you've got your home and the immediate space around it, and that's where you're going to want to plant, specifically. So you step out to the next one, you get your kitchen garden, your microgreens, so things that are easily accessible that you're going to use more on a day-to-day basis, you plant close to the home. So a lot of this comes into just knowing what you want to plant and then how often you're going to go to it. And then from there, you kind of step out and you've got, some longer growing crops. Out a little further, you've got your fruit trees, your nut trees, pasture if you're incorporating animals into your plan. And then you go out further, different tasks that may, help you with your permaculture garden. And then all the way out on the top, I like this one, the unmanaged wild zone, where you forage, you gain inspiration, you just go out and hang out and be with nature, which this is a big thing with permaculture. It's really being in tuned with your surroundings. So first thing with observing your area, yeah, taking that time to look around and see what you've got. You know, where are the native trees growing? Where do you have open land? Where does water flow? You know, and I think it's important in this climate, of course, to take into account where does the snow go when it melts? And then where does the water flow during heavy storms, light storms? And then looking at your roof and other hard surfaces, and how can you capture some of that water and use it in your gardening space. So changing over time, I think that's a big thing that, you know, kind of gets overlooked. You know, if you plant a really big fruit or nut tree close to the home because you want to gather it, you know, right when it's ready, well, that tree could get pretty large and overshadow a lot of your lower lying plants. So it's taking the growth patterns into account and planting accordingly. And then sunlight, of course, we all know is a big part of it. So you want to find the areas that are going to get the right amount of sun for the right plants. And wind is something I've definitely taken into account with some projects where we might need to plant a certain type of shrub or like an arborvitae, something that's going to block some wind so that we can plant the more delicate stuff in that area. Because if you get a really strong gust of wind coming through and it breaks your tomato plants, or just, you know, goes through and destroys your lettuce, it's going to be kind of upsetting. And then wildlife. So I'd like to point out this photo. This is from my parents' home out to my garden. And this was where I, you know, the one of the few options of where I could plant this. And you see it's way out there. So this isn't the most ideal situation. It's far from the home. It's close to, you know, the wooded area. So that means there's issues with wildlife that you got to take into account. And to water this, I've got to bring a big reel of hose out there. So really, you know, it's kind of tucked away out of view, which may be nice for some neighbors and for different, you know, properties and whatnot. But for, you know, an active gardener, this is kind of out there. So really planning to bring, you know, these raised beds where I've got, you know, salad greens and herbs and stuff, that would be closer to the home so that I could get to it more easily. And then I could install an irrigation system or run a rain barrel to it. To run something out there, I've got to go quite a distance. So it may make sense in the first round of planning, but if you think down the road of how you're going to get there, watering the plants, all that stuff, it's really important to keep it in mind. Now it's just kind of funny that, you know, here I'm this gardener and I got to walk half a mile to get to my garden. So I like to show that as an example. So ideas and goals for the property. This is important to look at this. Are you trying to grow for fun? Or are you looking to feed the family? Would you like access to share with neighbors? That's going to come into account so that you can decide how much space you need. And it's also going to look at, you know, the structures you need. Are you going to do raised beds? Are you going to do in-ground? Do you have room for container gardens? Are you going to put a greenhouse in? All of that stuff is going to be determined by, you know, your goals for this space. And with that, you know, you can start to plan on, yeah, how many people, you know, who's going to be helping you with it. So time and labor. You know, if your garden's way out like mine, you know, that's extra time to get out there. You got to get the hose there. So it's important to look at all that, because we don't want this to be, you know, a huge chore list of tasks you've got to accomplish to get your food. It's, you know, permaculture is meant to make it easier to produce food and to harvest food and to really just enjoy the process. And then with that, you're using the land to your advantage and working with it. So types of plants, kind of looked at that a little bit. If you're doing fruit trees or bushes, you know, looking for the right place for them to be. Are they going to be bringing in wildlife? Do you need to protect them? Are they going to be, you know, again, easily accessible? So a lot of that stuff goes in these planning stages and just figuring out where you're going to put things. And I like to combine vegetables, herbs, and flowers into the same gardening space, because you get the benefits of the plants working together. You bring in pollinators for those plants that need to be pollinated. And you can even, you know, enhance the amount of wildlife that's on your property by strategically putting these in the right spaces. And then, you know, fruit trees and bushes, sometimes those need to be protected a bit more. So you need to have all of that in mind when you plan. So really these are, you know, the first steps of permaculture, and it's just getting to know your land. And with the design, you know, I always like to start people off with the containers. It's a good thing you can do in that first year of observation is, you know, test the sunlight on your space, get some containers out there, grow some herbs or some, you know, smaller vegetables. The cool thing is now we've got a lot of varieties that grow well in containers and even are bred for the containers specifically. So you can get a lot of production out of that. Then you can jump up to some raised beds, experiment with that, grow your harvest a bit more, and then working into in-ground gardens, you know, taking up bigger parts of your property, getting rid of these big open green spaces that we have, and really then you're taking off and having a lot more of a harvest coming in. And here are just some examples of container gardens. This is one I have on my parents' balcony. You've got some ground cherries. There are some flowers with some sage, a tomato plant, and this is a comfrey, which is another great plant for permaculture, as you can cut the leaves and add it to the garden for essentially a fertilizer. Then over here's a little setup I did for a customer. We've got strawberries, herbs, more strawberries, you know, and the cool thing is they're right by the chair. So you can sit and enjoy the outdoors and harvest right off that and snack a little bit while you're hanging out. So this type of stuff is really good for small spaces, of course, for experimenting with your new property, or just if you're getting into gardening for the first time, I really recommend jumping into containers first. And even just, you know, having some food closer to your home so that you can access it easier. Then we have raised beds. And with this, you can really have a nice, efficient gardening space that's still adhering to some of the permaculture principles. And what I like to do with raised beds is really, in this photo, this is my garden after I've added a couple new raised beds and put a fence around it. But I like all the beds being connected to the native soil. And with that, you're getting all of the benefits of that native soil. You get the micro and really helping with the soil quality. And you see I've got, you know, flowers, got some basil, there's sage over here. So it's all planted in one place, more closely, you know, similar to like nature would have it, where, you know, I don't have just straight rows of things. I like to mix it up and really take advantage of how these plants work together. And then here you can see how you can have a lot of growing capacity right in your backyard and still have some room to play and you know, have some green space. But this really is it's a customer of mine that they just wanted to go all out, and they had this old play set that used to be here, and they removed it. They didn't know what to do with this space, and instead of tearing it all out and everything, we just decided to go with that for the garden space. And now they've really got a lot of potential here. And you know, the garden's nice and contained in this area, and they're growing just a ton of food there. So raised beds are really a lot of fun to work with and make it a little easier, and you can still keep it more of this natural idea. And with these, again, there's just a whole mixture of different plants in different beds. And I, you know, strategically planted them so that the ones on this further end closest to the house are in the full sun areas, whereas back here, these beds get more shade. So we, you know, put the more shade tolerant ones towards the back of the property, and the tomatoes and peppers and that type of stuff in the foreground. Then here we've got some bigger examples of what you can do with some space in your garden or in your property. This was just a photo I found online where, you know, they've got a smaller lot in probably more of a city scene, and they just packed it with stuff. And you can see they've got a chicken coop, which will come into play as we get later in the presentation. They have a greenhouse, well, 2 greenhouses, and then a little fenced in garden and, you know, more perennial plants around. So they're just packing as much as they can into this property, yet still, you know, adhering to some of those ideas of placing things in the right place and, you know, growing as much as you can. And then this I put in for my parents' property. It's, you know, kind of like a food forest, which we'll touch on later, but really this is the edible landscaping idea, and, you know, mixing perennials in with some fruit producing plants. So we've got a plum tree here and here. Then there's a gooseberry in the back and another one back behind this hydrangea. And then we mixed in some native cone flowers and then a cup plant and a big monarda. So these, you know, are native perennials that are going to bring in the pollinators. You've got some more decorative plants in here, a butterfly bush, and then you've got some food producing plants. So with this, you're really getting a mix of stuff. It looks really nice. It's placed out in the back where we can, you know, have nice fruit trees, and, you know, they only get accessed once a year, so they can be further back in the property. So a couple of things that I like to touch on when looking at permaculture and gardening. Just one of the most important things that we tend to overlook is soil. You know, soil is hands down the most important place to start. You know, without good soil, we don't have that, all that microcosm of life going on that really increases the health of our plants and then produces a better, you know, edible product for us. So soil is really important. Compost, of course, is every gardener's friend. You know, this is a great permaculture idea that, you know, you're not sending that waste to the landfill. You're keeping it on site, and you're, you know, creating a product that you can put into your garden and really enhance the health of it. Another interesting thing with permaculture is animals. Animals play a key role in nature, and we can adapt our gardens to work with the animals rather than, you know, boxing them out and fencing everything. So I like to, you know, say, you know, if you've got deer or something on your property, plant a dummy garden out in some space that they might hit. And then if they're content with that, maybe they won't eat your garden. Not 100% foolproof, but it's at least a way to work with nature instead of trying to battle with it all the time. There's also the aspect of having animals within your garden, such as chickens. Ducks can be a good additive. You know, some people have, on the bigger scale, they've got cows, they've got sheep, goats. Goats I always think would be a lot of fun because they do a lot of the hard landscaping work for you and clear out the areas that you want to move into with your garden. So there's just a great opportunity to work with animals in permaculture. Perennials, of course, you know, you plant them once, they keep coming back. That's just a great way to have a sustainable, you know, gardening space. So these perennials can be added, whether it be, you know, flowers or just the perennial herbs, the perennial, you know, fruits and all these different plants that you put them in once, you don't have to mess with them again, and you can just continue to harvest off them. Mulch, as we'll look at a couple of different types of mulch, is a great way to protect your soil, to keep that precious water resource, you know, staying within your soil and helping your plants. And then water, we'll look at a couple of different ways to keep water on our property. And, you know, with permaculture, a big thing is we've got all these natural resources, and, you know, typically we take all the water on our property and we try to push it off. So I'll go over a couple of ways that we can retain that on our property and really use it for our plants. Soil, not dirt. Dirt is dead soil. Dirt is what you can put in something and there's just no real nutritional value to it. So I kind of get made fun of quite a bit for correcting people on this because, you know, soil is what we're looking for. Soil is just packed with life. And if you really want to start a garden, you need good soil. So that's always, you know, the first step in gardening is building that soil, and permaculture is all about maintaining that soil and adding to it rather than taking from it. And we'll look at a couple of different ways of doing that. No-till gardening is really important. Every time you dig into that soil, you're putting oxygen in there, and it actually kills a lot of the microorganisms. So going with the no-till and just building on top really helps that. And this photo here was one of my raised beds. This was the soil from the growing season. I took a lot of grass clippings and leaves and put them on top. And then I dumped soil from, whether it be excess potting soil or stuff that I had laying around. Ideally, it'd be compost that you could put on top. And then you just let all this break down over winter, and that adds to your soil, so that next year, you've had all this work being done within the soil that you're just going to have a great growing medium to work with. And then putting mulch over the garden is, this could be considered mulch, just grass clippings and leaves at the end of the season. Ideally leaves, take all those leaves from the yard and pile them on your garden. It's going to protect the soil throughout the winter, and it's just going to break down and really add to the health of that soil. You can even go further and shred those leaves up, make smaller particles that are going to break down quicker, and that'll be even better. Because some of the leaves, if they're big, they tend to overlap, and then they can smother out some of the life going on in the soil underneath it. So that's just a couple of things to keep in mind with that. There are other types of mulch, and we'll take a look at what we can do with those. Composting. Who doesn't love rotting material at this point? If you're a gardener, it's just a great way to take all that extra, even yard waste, obviously the food scraps from your house, get those into a compost bin. It doesn't matter how you compost. It could just be a cold compost where you've just got a pile and you just kind of let it sit, and when it's ready, it's ready. And now you've got all that stuff breaking down and giving you something that's just going to benefit your plants. So here's my compost pile. Super simple, 3 open sides with hardware cloth on them, and then an open 4th side to add to. And when I'm being a good composter, I actually turn it quite often and let it break down quicker. Otherwise, I just let it sit and I keep adding to it, and eventually there will be something to work with. Really good composting system is having multiple bins. That way you can see how this one builds up, and then you just move over to the next one. And this one looks like it's got some more usable compost in it. So you start using that, you build this, and then you swap back over. Compost is the #1 amendment for soil. It's just got a whole bunch of really good things that are going to help feed that soil. So if you have anything that you'd like to start in gardening that you haven't yet, compost is really an important one. And a big point of permaculture is just keeping that waste on the property, not sending it off when you can use it in some manner. A couple of sources, kitchen scraps, plant material, shredded up newspaper, or just the extra paper you have from printing something. A lot of that, well, most if not all of it is going to be soy-based ink. So it's all good for going in the compost, and really adds that carbon that you need in there. You can add the animal bedding and some animal waste. The key thing is, you don't want to put in dog waste. You don't want to throw the cat litter in there. If you'd like to throw a boost into your composting bin, you can get horse manure from a local farm and just really let that compost sit for a long time before you put it in the garden. And that's just going to add a ton of nitrogen in there. So if you don't have a compost bin, check it out. Looking at animals in the garden. I know a lot of us live in spaces where we can't have, this full-on, wildlife preserve of animals running around, but chickens are more available these days and more accepted. So they're a great animal to have in our garden space. They till up soil, they fertilize it, and they, are then producing eggs, which if you're, open to eating eggs, you've got that resource as well. But they also go around, they eat bugs, they, keep some of the pest insects out of the garden for you. They do have their challenges, as any element of gardening can have. So you just got to be aware of what they can do and what they can't do. So they're a really good one. Goats, as I said, they can be little mini landscapers and run around and clearing out buckthorn, or if you've got a lot of garlic mustard in an area, you can unleash them on that space and clear it out for, expanding the garden. They control some of that wild growth, which is important if you've got an area that you're just kind of letting go for a while before you move into it. And then they as well produce fertilizer. Bees, as we all know, they're pollinators. And if you've got the honeybees, you can gather honey from them. Some other beneficial bees that we, kind of get overlooked. I forget how many native bees we have to this area, but honeybees are not native. They're from Europe, and we've got just a couple dozen native bees that we can help by letting native wildflowers grow, by not treating our soil, by placing bee houses that are have little holes in them that are good for mason bees, and those are really good pollinators for a garden. Getting into some of the bigger animals with a cow and a pig, they have their place, but they can be, a little more space consuming and a little trickier to work, but they do have good benefits to the garden. And cows, manure is great. They also produce, food for us in the form of the dairy products. Pigs, ducks, fish, some of the ones that don't get in there as often. If you do look into what's called aquaculture, it's a form of, it's kind of into the permaculture world where you're having fish in a pond or fish in a pool, and you can plant plants on like a floating garden on top. And with that, the fish are actually fertilizing the plants, and then you have the fish to harvest as well. So just kind of cool ways you can use different animals and how they can kind of help and be good with our gardening. Perennial plants. So a lot less work. We can select perennials that are native to our area. I've got some here. This is a mulberry tree that is growing on my parents' property. And it actually didn't fruit for the 20 years that they've been in this house until I really started, whether this is true because I planted a bunch of stuff or whether it was just coincidence, but they really started fruiting in the last years that I started planting wildflowers and, gardens all over where I was allowed to. So mulberries are fantastic. They're around. They're great upper story plants that can provide shade for areas as well as fruit. And they're really, they're everywhere. It's a shame that a lot of people remove them not knowing that they can eat the berries. Another one that's probably familiar to most people is the coneflower. And there is a purple coneflower that's native to our area. They're great for the bees. They're also good at this time of year. I see a lot of goldfinches going and eating the seeds, and that just kind of helps our area, and they just benefit our plants. Another one, this is a ground cherry, which used to be a little more prevalent in the area, but I love these. They're fantastic to eat. They're like little candy in a wrapper for kids. And they can, I kind of recommend putting them in a container as they can spread quite easily, but they're just really cool looking plants that are fun to work with. So if you pick perennials that are native to our area, they're quite reliable and they're hardy to our climate. So I think that's a key when deciding on what plant to get. Pick something that's going to do quite well for your area. And it's always good to go with natives because that's going to work best with the animals and with the temperature changes. So here's one too. They have permanent root systems, so they're going to help with erosion. They're going to improve the soil. They're going to create habitat. They're going to benefit not only us, but nature as well. So you can kind of see a lot of these things with permaculture is working with our environment instead of just doing what we kind of want to and trying to control it. So some examples, as you see with the pictures, but fruit trees, some fruit bushes. There are certain herbs, and then the wildflowers are really important as well. Mulch. So I know we're a little close in time. So mulch, you want that to protect the soil. It helps build the soil, as we went over with the earlier part. And then types of mulch: wood chips, grass clippings, hay or straw, and you can even use plants, which is called either green manure or cover cropping. And a few things with wood chips. Sometimes if you've got a lot of fresh wood chips on your garden, it can actually pull nitrogen out of the soil as it decomposes. So it might be a good idea to pile those good wood chips in a part of your yard that you can spare the space. Let them break down a little bit over a season, and then you can use those for mulch on the property. I had really good success using those in my raised beds, kept the weeds down quite well, cut my watering down significantly, and also just kind of set the garden off nicely and made it look really good. But this is type of stuff, if you have a tree service come in to remove a tree, they're going to have a lot of excess wood chips, and you've just got access to free product there. So you can take that and utilize it. Again, keeping these resources on our property instead of having them shipped off somewhere else. Grass clippings are great to leave on your lawn. It's equivalent of a full nitrogen treatment from a lawn service, and it cuts down on you having to bag them up. But if you do have excess clippings, those are great to add to gardening spaces. They again can pull some nitrogen out of the soil, but they also can add it in if you turn them into the soil. It's another good addition. Hay or straw, those are also good byproducts of other industries that can be used in your garden. It's really important to make sure you don't get straw from somewhere that it's been treated with a chemical, and also that it doesn't have seeds on it. So if you get straw and it's going to seed and you put that in your garden, you're going to have a mess to deal with. So it's important to source where you get your mulch from, and also to just be aware of some of the side effects of what the mulch can do. And big important part with wood chips, make sure there's no black walnut in there, because that will kill your plants and really make an unhappy gardener. So cover crops, those are lower growing plants. Sometimes they're really tall. You can use rye, you can use clover, you can use field peas, something that you're just going to put in your garden at the end of the season, let it grow a little bit, and then die with the winter. And then in spring, you're going to cut it all down and turn it into your soil for extra nutrients. And really what that is using plants to cover your soil, as well as to dig roots deep to break up some of that soil and aerate it naturally. And then it's also, as those die, the root systems will get eaten by microorganisms and benefit the soil that way. So here we've got a couple examples of using mulch. So this is a Chicago hardy fig tree that I started in a container, and I just mulched it right in the container. It did great, and this cut down on watering with, especially within a container where they tend to dry out quicker. This really helped me cut down on watering, which is preserving a resource of ours. And then here you can see they've got all sorts of mulch in between the plants and are really just covering the soil. This was my garden, I think 3 years ago, where I used just rough chips from an arborist and put them in between the plants. And again, cut down on watering and made cleaning up any undesired plants quite easy. Here we've got a look at cover cropping. This is actually one of our board members, well, the vice president of the Waukesha County Green Team. She put in this hugelkultur mound and covered it with a cover crop at the end of the season. And you can see how that just creates this green mulch over the top. And now that's helping build the soil, and it looks kind of cool. And she lives in Pewaukee, so the P was kind of a cool coincidence as well. Here's another example of cover cropping with clover, just covering the whole area with it. And then water resources. So water, is a really important resource that we need to not only protect, but also cut back on our use of it. So using some of these techniques is a great way to do that. A rain barrel, you're collecting from the roof runoff, and really in a decent storm, you're going to fill this rain barrel pretty quick. So now from there, you can run a hose just for filling up watering cans. You could put a water pump on there and pump water through a hose out to a garden, all sorts of things. And it's just really great to capture that water that way and then use it on your property. This here was just a kind of a fun example of a gray water system. So this is a system in permaculture where you'd have this hooked up to your house on a bigger scale, and you'd have all the sink and shower runoff go through a filtering system. And then this is using, 2 buckets to imitate what you could do naturally with, just a swale and a rock garden, and then maybe a rain garden. And this filters the water through the soil and then through the rocks and plants, and then could flow into your garden. So on a larger scale, this is a great way to keep that water out of the waste system and right on your property, but takes a little bit of extra plumbing to accomplish. So some other features you can have in the garden. A keyhole garden, which is just a nice use of space and really can add a decorative aspect to your property. A food forest, which I've got a couple examples of that. And then in the previous slide, you saw a hugelkultur mound, which is giving you a bit of a vertical space while, creating an easier to maintain kind of natural raised bed approach. Herb spirals, which are one of my favorites, but I haven't gotten to build yet. And we'll look at that. And then a rain garden, which this here is a rain garden I put in for a customer in Milwaukee. And they actually have their sump pump going down this little river, and it was just creating a big puddle here. So we built up the bank around the edge. We added some rain garden plants in there. This actually isn't the finish. There was a lot more plants and then mulch all over the bed. But this way the water flows in and will actually water these plants and will fill up, but won't overflow. And then there's another overflow back here that runs along the back of the property. So it's a great way to get a decorative piece in your yard and, really use those heavy rains to benefit, some plants that you can enjoy. Here's an example, a couple examples of a keyhole garden. You can either have just a mound or an in-ground garden like this, and then the keyhole where you can come in and harvest from here. So you've got this little kind of hangout space and area to work in. And then with this, you design and put your more often harvested plants in the front rows, and then in the back, those that wouldn't be harvested until maybe later in the season. And this is an example of one of my customers. They had this built, and then I filled and planted it. But you can see similar idea. You come in and you can harvest everything from the inner space, and just really is a cool place to hang out and enjoy your garden. Food forest. I really enjoy these. This idea really goes with permaculture because you're designing a space that really mimics a natural forest. So with that, you're going to have a larger upper story tree that's going to be, if you get into some of these nut trees, could be up to 40 feet tall. So that's going to be your primary upper story tree. And then from there, you've got some of the maybe dwarf varieties of fruits. You've got then a fruit bush, and then you've got some lower lying perennials, and you can even add some of the annual flowers or vegetables into there as well. But this picture better illustrates how, if you look out at a woodland or just out your backyard in a wild area, you can see how there's those upper stories, the mid stories, and then the low-lying stuff. And all of that kind of works together and, again, protects the soil. And then with this, you get quite a harvest out of a space like this. The plants work together, it creates habitat for animals, and you've just got a really cool spot to go and just harvest all sorts of fun stuff. Then the hugelkultur mound. This is another one of my favorite gardening practices. This again is Stacy, the vice president of our green team. She put this in, and you can see the different layers going into this. And it's also a keyhole garden. So with this, a hugelkultur mound, you can use wood scraps in the base, and then add soil, compost, plant material to add over the top of it, and then you're growing on top of that. But it's great about this is this wood material will actually absorb a lot of the water, rainfall, snow melt, all of that, and store it in here while it decomposes. And your plants will dig roots right into the center of this and be able to pull water out. And it creates a low maintenance garden that is also raised up a little bit for ease of harvesting. And this one you can see they can get quite high. You could use it as a privacy berm that is going to be long lasting and quite fertile for you. And then you can get all sorts of different designs and make it look really nice in your property. The herb spiral, another way to grow more food in more of a design approach and add a focal point to your property by using different materials, and then also using that vertical space so you can grow a bit more in a small space. And then you can use materials right off your property. Again, it's the first spot we should look within permaculture is what's on our property that we can use. So as we're kind of at the end here, I just put together a few final thoughts. Start small, pick plants that work for your space. Again, that's going back to the planning stage. Make a plan, so short-term and long-term. Use the resources available to you first, then go off-site. So really look around your property, what's there already that can be used. And that could be even using logs to create a raised bed, using plant material to start the compost, using those grass clippings. All of that is right there already on site. And then the big one, have some fun. This is great getting into all of this. Check out nature whenever you're on a hike, see how nature does it, and then how can you mimic that in your home garden. I also put a few books on here and some of my favorite podcasts that have really taught me quite a bit about gardening and working these principles into your property. This one really got me into the permaculture idea. And this is like one of the Bibles of permaculture. It's just a great book that has some amazing stories in it. So yeah, that is permaculture in your home landscape. And I thank you all for joining me for this. Here's some of my contact info. You can check out the Green Team on here. And then we also have a podcast where we talk about sustainability, and we meet with local professionals that are working sustainability into their professional life. And yeah, we just have a lot of great conversations there. So thank you, everyone. And I'm sure we have a little bit of time for questions.
Thank you so much, Alec. That was so informative. Like, an aha moment for me was that I could mulch my containers. That never even occurred to me. Like, what a great way to save water. So I'm gonna go probably do that tomorrow. So thank you. Pat asked, are raised beds suitable for raspberries, or are raspberries better in the ground?
Yeah, that's a good question. Raspberries could certainly do okay in a raised bed. Again, a raised bed that's connected to the native soil, so you're getting that benefit. It being a perennial, it's going to keep going, and they do spread, so a container is actually nice to keep them, in the space that you would like. I put some more towards the back of the property where they've got some space to grow, and then you can get back there. you know, I could see a raised bed being easier to harvest, to you know, prune out the old canes and do some of that. So yeah, I'd say absolutely.
Thank you. And then another question from someone really exciting, their planting is done. So I really appreciate that name. Yeah, I appreciate that. About crimson clover. So first, does it die off in spring, and does it compete with your other plants?
So yeah, that's a thing with cover cropping, is picking the right one for the right situation. So for my raised beds, yeah, I believe, I'd have to double check this, but I believe crimson clover is on that list. And the key thing of that is getting out there in the late winter, early spring, and cutting it all down before it goes to seed, and then mixing that in with your soil. So whether that's a gentle, you know, turning it in or covering it with new soil and compost. But something like that, yeah, it's picking the right plant so it won't compete with your plants and will die off in that right timeline. I know there's one, if you use rye, you really have to be on top of it, or it can seed pretty quickly in the spring, and then you've got a bit of a mess on your hands. I see there's a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
Are there any vegetables that you shouldn't put in your compost once they are done producing? That's a good question, because tomato plants, if those have gotten hit with a disease, you do not want to compost them. It's best to just, you know, throw them in the trash, or, you know, just dispose of them outside, because that pathogen could get into the compost and then would wreak havoc on your next harvest. And then I also see any good resources for companion plants. I don't think I have any off the top of my head, but let me go to that last slide. These books do deal with, or Gaia's Garden, I believe, has some companion planting ideas in there, and Mother Earth News touches on it, and Joe Gardner might touch on that. But yeah, that's a good question, and there's a lot of varying ideas out there about companion planting.
I want to thank you so much, Alec, for sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you to all of you. Happy gardening. And I hope this was helpful for your projects.
Thank you, everyone.